Welcome back, players, to another episode of Vocal Co-op with your host, Dalton Miller, and my co-host, Jed Pressgrove.
How's it going, guys?
Today we're going to talk about a topic that is, it's not really a hot button issue right now, but I think it will be soon enough. And it's just something I've noticed in almost every game I've played in the last few months. And that is, have leveling systems become the new QuickTime event? Have they become to the fact where every game that comes out has to have some type of level up or progression system? And what our real question is behind this topic is, should they even be that way? I mean, at this point, shouldn't the kind of the pen and paper or the checklist, the spreadsheet of, okay, I just got a level, let me go into my menu, select this thing, now I can do it. Have we not gone past that as far as a culture and as far as an industry? So that's my question today that we're going to discuss is, Jed, have we outgrown standard commonplace leveling systems?
I definitely think that we've probably, or at least, all right, let me just speak personally. I think I've just gotten tired of it to a certain extent. I will say that I wouldn't necessarily compare it to QuickTime events because I think QuickTime events always had little value in the first place.
Yeah.
And only a few games have really done them that well. Now, most RPGs have leveling systems. So if we were going to make that comparison, we would almost be saying that, okay, all RPGs are kind of, dumb because they have leveling systems.
Well, even most games now are RPGs, kind of, if you would say. It's tacked on, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the new tacked on multiplayer, it seems.
So I think it might be useful for us to look at some of the examples.
Okay.
Okay. So to go to a recent review that I just wrote, and it's a review of the indie game on Xbox Live, Vintage Hero. You can check it out at fateofthegame.com. To go to that game, okay, so it's a Mega Man game. It's a lot like the original Mega Man series, but it has a leveling system. So after you get a certain amount of experience points from killing bad guys, and sometimes when you kill them, they'll drop these little boxes and it'll say 25 or 50, and so you get even more experience when you pick those up.
Okay.
So then it says press Y to level up. So I have to press Y, then I have to go in there, and then I have to basically, everything starts at level 0 or level 1. I can't remember which one. So every time you use experience points on something, it goes up another level. And so you have your weapon, you have health, you have defense, and then you have your special weapon meter.
Right.
Just like in Mega Man.
Okay.
So you can increase your health and all that sort of thing, but really, what are you going to do first off? You're going to increase your attack.
Yeah, usually.
Obviously. Especially when you notice fighting the first few enemies that it takes so many hits to kill them. So
Right.
obviously you need to do your attack. And that's what I do most of the time. Just go straight to attack in these sorts of situations. And then eventually you're going to start doing one of two things. You're going to go to health or you're going to go to defense. Now some people might want to do the special weapons, but the special weapons, you don't even get them at the beginning of the game.
Right, that's a later issue.
Yeah, so you just gradually accumulate them, but most of them are not that good unless you're using it against a certain boss, just like in Mega Man. Right. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, what's the point of this leveling system? Why can't you just make certain enemies take a certain amount of hits?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand why we have to stop the action by pressing Y. It's a Mega Man game.
Exactly.
Who gives a shit? Who wants it to be like a role-playing game?
Yeah. And in adverse, I can say I've been playing Mega Man Zero lately, right? On Game Boy Advance, also on DS. And it is by name a Mega Man game. The difference and it has a leveling system as well, but the difference in it is it's done in the way that I think that leveling systems pretty much universally need to go. And that is, there is no stopping the action. There is no pausing the menu. There is no anything. What happens is you use a certain type of weapon and you get a certain amount of kills with that weapon, level 2 for that weapon. There's no break in the action. A little message from your controller friend at the base calls in and says, you leveled up this weapon. It can now do this thing. Do this to do it. That's it. It's leveled up through experience of using that particular aspect of the game. Another game that brings that to mind immediately off the top of my head is Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, which I know you haven't had the pleasure of playing yet. It's kind of it's hard to use that as a good descriptor because it also has the how many points do you want to add to health? How many points do you want to add to agility? How many points do you want to add to magic? You know, the same old like checklist.
Kind of like Fallout, I'm guessing, since it's
very much like
also
Fallout.
by Bethesda.
very much like Fallout, but you get to pick perks, of course, perks, whatever. I'm not a fan of those either. But I feel like the good thing that is in Skyrim is that it's a per level or per aspect of the game basis. So by using a certain magic spell, you level up that certain aspect of magic. By using the bow for archery, you level up your archery skill. Now, at the end of the day, you're still going into a menu once you reach a certain amount of XP with that weapon, and that's where I have a problem with it. And then you're picking the way the weapon goes, right? I feel like now we should be to a point where it's so much more natural, and especially as RPGs, what's the point of an RPG? An RPG, its point is for immersion, right? For you to become that character, to make that character your own.
To grow.
Exactly. And for you to feel like you're part of the game. So when you have to do that, when I have to pause the menu, go into the thing, and look at my choices, I end up spending 10 minutes in there because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with this stuff, you know? And then I feel like the game would flow so much better if I was using archery, I leveled up when I was using archery, and that's what leveled up innately. Like the game took over from there and said he was using archery. He just got, he had 50 headshots between this time and last time he leveled up. So now he's better at archery. His accuracy's better, and maybe time slows down a little bit for you or something. Something like that to that effect. What's some other game? Those are a couple of games that do it right for my part. What's another game, perhaps like Vintage Hero, that you can see needs some kind of improvement as far as level up structure?
Well, maybe I should go to Call of Juarez Gunslinger. Now, this one is not as bad as Vintage Hero because Vintage Hero is just really unnecessary because we're only talking about 4 categories here. Mm. And the thing is, you don't ever have to put it into your special weapon. I never did.
Yeah.
It's pointless. You just put it into attack, you put it into health or defense, whatever. But see, on Gunslinger, it's skill tree based as well. So you can go in 3 different directions, or you can go a little bit in each direction. You can become great with a rifle. You can become great with a shotgun, close quarters kind of stuff.
Right.
And then with pistols, you get dual wielding and all that sort of thing. So I like that. I mean, even though you have to stop, it does seem to make more of a difference when you do it. But at the same time, though, the one thing that I don't like about Call of Juarez Gunslinger is that the game is not that much fun to play at first because your aiming is just, you can tell it's ever so slightly broken.
Yeah.
I mean,
on purpose.
Maybe that's not the right term to use, but you can tell that it's just not as smooth. And see, it's not very fun playing like that.
Right.
When you play an old game like old first-person shooter like Doom, or to go, a little bit more far ahead with Metroid Prime, those games are really smooth. Well,
shooting a gun is shooting a gun in the beginning of the game.
So now I'm playing a game. So now I'm playing a game, $15, albeit, but still I'm playing a game now.
It's a game that was designed in a way.
And it's 2013, and when I'm starting to play it, it doesn't feel as smooth as Doom or Metroid Prime. To me, that is problematic, and it all goes back to this point about RPG, leveling.
Yeah.
Now, what I think they could have done with that game to make it okay is that you start off with smooth mechanics right there, and not have don't rely so much on the skill trees. Like, have a skill tree, but don't do it to where you have to just keep building up so much that at the beginning of the game it feels like, okay, this is not even advanced compared to Metroid Prime as far as how the game feels.
Right.
I'll tell you, I don't mind pausing to the screen and leveling up if I'm playing an RPG. Because that's what I expect. I expect an RPG to be that kind of slow, deliberate type of game, for the most part.
If we're talking about a game like The Witcher, or, or a Final Fantasy game, or, something, especially in turn-based games, because those games are all spreadsheets anyway, essentially.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of skill besides you planning out the battles in your mind and then setting the characters to do them.
So when we're talking about these action-packed games like Vintage Hero and Gunslinger, if you're going to have a leveling system, it needs to be done really just one of 2 ways. One is the way that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You level up as you use something over and over again. Yeah. Which, in the case of Vintage Hero, I would still say that that's pointless. I still really would, because you're using your regular weapon all the time.
Yeah, if it's your regular gun.
If you're going to make a Mega Man game, make a fucking Mega Man game. Don't make a Mega Man game with a tacked-on thing from Super Mario RPG.
You're right.
Okay. So you can do it that way though with Gunslinger. You know, as you use the pistol, you get better with the pistol.
Mhm.
Or if you really got to have the skill tree, then make it a smaller skill tree and start at a pretty good base.
Yeah.
So that you can at least have fun, as much fun as you can at the beginning.
Right.
And I think that's one of the two ways that it should be done in a game like that.
Well, it's interesting you would bring up that point specifically in the game because the last two games I have reviewed for the site, Deadpool and Mars Warlogs, God damn it, it's bad. Anyway, Mars Warlogs, they've not been the greatest games. And I have reviewed them as such, but there's an issue I speak about in both of those reviews and I've spoken about in the podcast, and that is that I feel like leveling systems have become almost a crutch for game designers. And the reason I say that is because they are designing games backwards, essentially, at this point. Deadpool's the same way, so is Mars Warlogs, and I'm guessing so is Cold War as Gunslinger. And now, to explain what I mean specifically is, the game mechanics and everything around it is designed with an in-game character in mind, a fully leveled up character, or at least to a certain percentage. The combat, the situations you're in, it's all designed around that fully leveled up character. So then once that is complete as far as the development phase, I'm assuming they go back, they strip them down, and they make it work to a point where you can actually get there. But still, that's going about it the wrong way. And that's what leads to what you're talking about, is where the game feels literally broken when you first start playing it. And in the case of Mars Warlogs, you level up so slowly in that game each time. Like, not you gain levels, but the small amount of stuff you get to put points into to get to the higher tier stuff, and the game is 6 hours long. So by the 5th hour of the game, the actual game is working the way that the developers had originally envisioned it working. Which to me, hey, great, you got less than 20% of your game working correctly. That is not acceptable to me.
Yeah.
Deadpool's the same way. Deadpool saved itself a little bit just because of the writing and because of the combat was actually at least a little bit fun, which is not the case with Mars Warlogs, but it's still suffering from the same issue. That the game was designed around him to be able to do all these combos and mix and match all these weapons at any given time, kind of in a Devil May Cry type situation. Except you can't do any of that until you played more than 60% of the game. Not effectively. So that's my personal take on the leveling stuff. Like maybe it does have a place in RPGs, like you said. But in action games or games that are built more around actual like skill-based combat, for instance, I think it's become a crutch and has become a bullet point on the back of the box. RPG features or level your character up as you play or whatever. And there are some games that are reviewed well that I think that for the most part it didn't need any leveling structure if they were going to go about it the way that they did. And one of those games for me is Mass Effect, which is universally lauded, great. In Mass Effect 1, you definitely needed a level up system because that was an RPG. The game was designed around that. Mass Effect 2, it became an action shooter game. And leveling up almost didn't mean anything. Like basically you weren't leveling up your character per se, you're just picking powers at that point. Like, oh, I want this power and I want it to be this level, I'm going to put that point here. I don't need that. Give me all the powers, give me all the guns, however effectively I do with them over the course of the game, that's what levels up every time I level up. I don't have to go to a single menu. Does that not make sense?
So you're just saying getting better at using certain things.
That's the way.
Kind of like in Contra.
Exactly.
From the very beginning, you can get a laser, you can get a spread shot, but your effectiveness with each weapon is all dependent on how much time you put into it and how much you progress naturally while playing the game.
True skill, more or less.
Yeah.
Now, and if we're talking about games that are meant to be that, and meant to be combo-based, or attack-based, or string-based, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't that make more sense to you? Like
it does. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I do kind of like is when I might be wrong about this, but is there not kind of a fine line between what we would call an RPG leveling system and then an upgrade system? It can be the same thing, but sometimes I feel like there can be a distinction. I know that you haven't played this game as much as some, but Resident Evil 4 has an upgrade system. Mm-hmm. But it's all about upgrading your gun.
Right.
And to me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you can upgrade guns in real life.
Exactly.
For better handling and everything.
Yeah.
to me, it's not. It doesn't come across as a tacked on RPG thing.
Right. You're not leveling up Leon.
Yeah.
You're not making him like, oh, he's faster at pulling a pistol out now.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah, you're taking the gun apart and putting it back together in a better way, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't show you doing that,
Yeah,
but that's the
more
idea.
Or less. Yeah.
Or you take a game like the indie game, Dead Pixels, which is the 8-bit zombie simulator.
Yeah, we got to play that, by the way.
Yeah, we should. We really should. I think it might just be local, though. I don't know if it's...
Even on PC? I don't know.
I think so. I think on the PC menu it said local.
Is it on Steam?
It is on Steam.
Maybe way around that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe so. But anyway, to get back on the point, it also has an upgrade system. But see, it has no experience points. It's all about you go to the shop, just like in Resident Evil 4, and you use money to buy things. So you can buy, more health. You start off with 100 hit points. Well, you can buy, an upgrade will give you 150.
Right.
It's not really, it doesn't feel the same way. You're going to a shop, it's the same thing with Resident Evil 4. You're going to a shop and you're buying something. That, to me, for whatever reason, feels a lot different than this pausing to the screen, and now I have to put points into something.
Exactly.
I know that it's a fine line, but for whatever reason, it doesn't piss me off when I play, or it doesn't, maybe not piss me off, that's probably too strong, but it doesn't annoy me at all, or it doesn't slow the game at all.
Yeah.
Slow down the game at all in Dead Pixels or Resident Evil 4 when I go to the shop, because I'm going to a shop.
Right.
But Vintage Hero, yeah, it's just an interruption.
It's there to take more time so that, essentially, I mean, it is an indie game and it's probably not that long, a couple hours, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have your 4, basic enemies you got to fight, and then you have your grind-a-thon at the end, just like with the Mega Man games. So.
Well, for me personally, like I said, I agree with you as far as the upgrade system. That's a completely different thing, especially if we're talking about inanimate objects, weapons, that kind of thing. That's fine. An RPG that, had it kind of half right again is Dead Island. Sorry, I want to say Dead Rising, but Dead Island. And it was the same situation where you had a shop and you had a crafting table where you could actually build better weapons. Like you could attach and it was crazy stuff, of course. Like you could attach like a 9-volt battery to a machete and it would heat the blade up, with copper coils. Like that's cool.
I do that in real life, man. Yeah, I mean,
super safe.
Yeah,
don't do that at home, by the
yeah.
way. But anyway, that kind of thing. But also, it was broken to the fact where you had character traits and you had to level all that stuff up. So even if I got an awesome gun, if I hadn't put any points in guns, like say I got an M16 for instance, I hadn't put any points into firearms on my character. That thing I might as well be shooting rubber bullets.
Yeah.
It was less effective than any melee weapon that I had already put points into.
Yeah.
And because of that game's, the way it was set up, like you don't really get a lot of firearms to any effective point until the very last third of the game. Well, who's going to put points into something that they're not using currently? Or even like, oh, well, they might get guns later. Or you might not. You don't know. You haven't played the game. So, I mean, that breaks it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would love to use guns here, but I can't.
Well, I think it's time for me to lash into a really popular game just for a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That was the first Castlevania game, to my knowledge, that had experience points. Okay?
Universally lauded, everyone.
Yeah, it is. Okay, and don't get me wrong, it is, visually, sonically, that game is very impressive. And it is fun to explore. But you get to a certain point in the game, and this is after things turn literally upside down. That is, if you get past the whole fake ending thing, which is really, really stupid. I really hate that. So if you get past that, though, you get to the, everything turns upside down thing.
Alucard's Dracula spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Yeah, there you go. Never could have figured it out otherwise, right? But, so, anyway, I'm at this point in the game, and I've had the game for a few years. I first started playing it on Xbox Live, because I think I don't know, I just never came across the game for whatever reason when I had a PS1. Weird situation, I know.
Yeah.
So, I stopped playing it after a while because I realized that I was going to have to do some grinding in order to kill certain enemies as quickly as I wanted to.
Right.
And so I went back to the game recently, and I started grinding, and I was just walking screen to screen to screen, just gaining levels. And you know what? After I gained about 6 or 7 or 8 levels, instead of continuing to play the game, I stopped playing it.
Because you were burned out.
Yeah, I was burned out.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the point? Why do we need leveling systems in games like this?
Yeah. where you should have just been like, you have a sword, like me leveling up. My human being is not going to make my sword
And I'll tell you
any
what,
more deadly if I hit someone with it.
And speaking of the sword, the leveling up thing, maybe that's a way to make up for the fact that you can't attack in 8 directions like you could in Super Castlevania 4. And that's kind of like, a different rant that I could go off on, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Symphony of the Night is inferior to Castlevania 4 because you can attack in 8 directions.
Yeah.
It's just like the Contra versus Metal Slug thing. I love Metal Slug. Same thing. Symphony of the Night, great game. But you know what? These games, they can't do this. Thus, I just don't care for them as much.
I agree.
There you go.
And that, talking about grinding, that takes us to the MMO part, where I know you don't have as much experience in MMOs as I do, but you have played Doctor Who MMO, which I haven't played. But anyway, that's another story. The
Worlds in Time, check it out. It's free.
Yeah, it's free on PC. It's a browser-based game. You don't even need a good card to run it. My problem with MMOs currently, in the state they're in is, and this goes back to World of Warcraft essentially, because Tor is probably Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's probably the game I have the most experience with as far as MMOs go, besides the EVE Online. And Star Wars: The Old Republic muddies the experience up so much that, and as huge of a Star Wars fan as I am, which Jed will tell you, there's Star Wars gear and shit everywhere in my house. And I'm even drinking out of a damn Boba Fett cup here, or Darth Vader.
And if I don't know what something's called, you'll quickly correct me.
I will quickly tell you.
There was one time I couldn't get land speeder out of my mouth, I think.
But anyway, I'm a huge Star Wars nut, and I played every Star Wars game ever made in my lifetime, literally.
He's got a problem.
And anyway, so of course I'm going to play Tor. And I love the game off the bat. And they're fully voiced characters, everything like that. So it's basically just kind of a Mass Effect situation. You're choosing dialogue. You can do bad and good stuff. That part's great. The part that I hate about Tor, and what ruined it for me, is the fact that there are so many pointless missions that are only in that game to help you increase levels and to stretch out the time for you to play it, that it becomes the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't go get 5 more of this. I couldn't defend 10 of these people anymore because it had no bearing on the story, it had no bearing on the experience. The only purpose it served was to me to grind until I got another level. And there are basically level caps to where you can go in the game. So if you're not high enough and you skip the first 3 planets which I tried with another character, skipping the first 3 planet side missions, you just can't go any further because they have geared that game to the point where if you're not a certain level when you get to this point, you won't be able to combat even the most mundane enemies with a lightsaber, which is ridiculous. Because if I hit you with a lightsaber once, you're dead. So come on, or a blaster for that matter. Like, what the hell does it matter how leveled up my personal character is? If I shoot you with a blaster,
but hey,
you're dead.
was this game before LucasArts went under?
This game was not developed by LucasArts, developed by BioWare Austin, which is another division of BioWare, and published by EA. So,
okay, published by EA. Okay.
It's not LucasArts to do with anything.
Well, I just wanted to blame them real quick, but I don't guess I can. The only reason why I was going to say that is because I associate Star Wars, with LucasArts. And, what you just talked about, it kind of reminds me of that Indiana Jones Greatest Adventures game on the SNES. You can shoot a guy. I mean, it takes like 5 or 6 shots to kill a guy on that game with a gun, but you can whip him twice and he dies.
Well,
sounds kind of like your lightsaber issue.
I'm all for the suspension of disbelief, right? Like, hey, I will go with you in a lot of places that other people will not allow their minds to go and be okay with it, right? But when you get to that kind of dumb shit, especially in an RPG game, where I'm supposed to be this character, I'm supposed to be doing this stuff, it's supposed to be an experience for me with a guy I made and have taken through this amount of progress, right? When you get to that point and you're like, okay, I can't go any further because I need to go back 2 planets and kill a bunch of fucking Jawas or something. That is not the way I want to play a game. I don't think anyone wants to play
Killing
a game
Jawas
like
just sucks, man.
Well, they're defenseless. But anyway. But still, like, that's my point with the MMOs. Like, something has to change with MMOs as far as leveling is going to go in the future. Because that kills it for me. Like, I understand, especially in a subscription base and a business base, they need to make that game time as long as possible because they're counting on your money every month. Now, in a situation where we're in now, where a lot of MMOs are going free to play because that subscription model that World of Warcraft made so popular has not stood the test of time for anything else, essentially. So now is the chance, right? Now is the chance for MMORPGs to break that and say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to have your guide, your character. You get better with the weapons that you use over time, as far as moves, maybe, perhaps. Damage is damage. At least it should be, as far as I'm concerned. Like, just because I've used a sword more than, I did in the beginning of the game, if I landed a good lick with that sword, it should have still hurt somebody as badly as it would later in the game. Maybe I just have more abilities with that sword as far as the moves I can do, the agility that I have in using it, the blocking and countering effects, perhaps. That kind of stuff maybe can come over time. But to wrap all this up, I don't think that level up systems are inherently bad and should just go away, personally. They just need to be revitalized for the next generation. And this is the perfect time to do it, right? We've got new hardware,
absolutely.
we've got new abilities as far as what programmers can do and put in games as far as mechanics. And I know a lot of people will say, well, that kind of stuff wasn't possible in the past. And I will agree with you, yes, on previous consoles it was not possible. But there's no excuse for it on computers, PCs. But for me, my personal opinion, let's not do any more spreadsheets and checklists unless that is what the game is. Now, EVE Online is a game where it's nothing but spreadsheets. And it's nothing but dice rolls, and that's fine. That is what that game is. I'm totally cool with it in that. But for everything else, especially in a skill-based game, we need to axe that stuff. We need to get rid of it.
We need to have more skill-based stuff in the first place. I think that's the issue here. You're talking about the crutch thing. We just need more demand for skill-based games in the first place. So what we're really saying here is that people should just do whatever we say. It doesn't matter.
Listen up.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the majority of gamers enjoy these mundane, idiotic leveling up systems. The developers should listen to us because you know what? We grew up in the 1980s. We grew up in the 1990s. Yeah. We played those Castlevania games till we just wanted to send. Well,
the original Mega Man.
We wanted to kill Konami. I mean, we wanted to kill Capcom. We want to feel like that again. We want to feel like we could choke developers for making games so hard.
I want to challenge people, a realistic challenge.
But in all seriousness, I mean, if you're going to make a Mega Man game, don't try to make it an RPG.
There you go. Or if you're going to do it, just do like they did in Mega Man Zero and make it where that weapon levels up over a certain time period or enemy skill with it. That's fine. That's skill-based.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we're going to go into our second segment, which last time it was my turn to be on the spot. This week it's Jed's. And I'm going to go back to an article he wrote a while back, opinion piece, and it's kind of going to roll into a larger conversation. To be specific, Jed wrote why the Nintendo Wii deserves a price drop.
Yeah.
That was the title of the article, am I correct?
Let's see. No Wii U price drop ignores reality.
There we go.
Because I wrote it right after basically Nintendo said, hey, we're not going to drop the price.
Exactly. It ignores reality. Especially now in the situation that Nintendo is in, which, trust me, they're not going anywhere. We've had that conversation on the podcast. They have $5 billion in cash assets. They're fine. They can fail 5 more home entertainment systems and still beat Nintendo at the end of the day. But for the Wii U and for the stalwart fans who bought that thing already and have nothing to play on it, literally. We got Pikmin 3. I'm sure you'll say that in the comments. There is Pikmin 3. With the new consoles coming out in the fall, you cannot ignore the fact that the Wii U will be swallowed completely by hype, by around these new systems, right? I mean, Nintendo is Nintendo, ladies and gentlemen. I will give them that. But the hype for these new next-gen systems, the Xbox One and the PS4, is ridiculous. I've never seen, in all my 31 years of time on this earth, I've never seen a console launch with 2 systems that people were so ecstatic about. So what does the Wii U have to do to cut a place in time for itself? Essentially, we've seen a lot of games that got announced at E3, right? And they had a really strong Comic-Con. But they didn't sell but 160,000 units since April. And that is not great at all for a console release that's less than a year old. So My question to you, Jed, is what is not only the price drop situation, but what does Nintendo need to do you think personally, to stay relevant until those games they announced at the Nintendo Direct and at Comic-Con and at E3, blah, 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 when they drop in 2014 and gamers have a reason to pick up a Nintendo because they have a catalog? What can Nintendo do to stay relevant? And why does a price drop serve that purpose?
Well, the price drop would serve the purpose because I think that people would look at it and there's no way that they could criticize it, for one thing. See, right now what they're trying to do is they're trying to do, a lot of Nintendo Direct stuff, which, like I said on Twitter, which you can follow me at JedPressFate, or you can just look up my fucking name, whatever. It'll show up, There's not many guys named Jed Pressgrove out there, But anyway, they're trying to do Nintendo Direct, and as I said on Twitter, the only one I tried watching was the one for E3, and it was really boring, so I didn't watch very much of it. But I was just trying to, do my job and everything. But, so that's what they're trying to do. But see, like people, and then these commercials, people are just jumping all over this approach. They're just not responding to it well. The reason why I think the price drop would work is that, first of all, it would work for me. I'm looking out for myself.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
what
it really.
A lot of gamers are waiting for that too.
I mean, you think about my article. I mean, yeah, it could apply to someone else, but in the end, though, I really don't give a shit whether it applies to everyone. I just want them to drop it for me. I want them to drop that price because I would like to get a Wii U. I would like to play some of the games on it. There are a couple of games that are on it right now I would like to play. There are a few that are coming out I would like to play. So drop the price because I'm not paying $350 for it. So that's the first point I have to make. But secondly, though, dropping the price, it would get everyone's attention, and I don't think anyone could criticize it. These other things that they're trying, people are criticizing.
Yeah.
You look at, even Earthbound, okay? People were waiting for that game for a long time.
What?
It finally came out, and Nintendo sells it for $10. Now, it does have the Wii U features, and it does have that official strategy guide to come with it. Mm-hmm. So Nintendo could justify it like that. Plus, the card itself on the Super Nintendo is outrageously priced right now because of just, high demand and low supply. So that's why they did it, but some people still said, oh, you know what? Yeah, they released Earthbound, but why couldn't it just be $8 like everything else? Like every other Super Nintendo game. And then of course that might lead into the other part of the conversation that says, you know what? Why is Nintendo selling Nintendo games for $5 on the, there's always something they can criticize them for.
Right.
If they drop the price on the system, they're bulletproof. There's no way that you could say, hey, this is a bad idea. The only thing you could say is, hey, it's not going to do much good. You could say that, but intrinsically, there's nothing that you could just say. You couldn't just say it's inherently a bad thing to drop the price right now. There's no way that you could say that. It may not help, but it's definitely not going to hurt anything. And see, that's what Nintendo needs to do. They need to do something where people can't flip it around and say, oh, well, this is just stupid. This isn't doing anything for you at all. This is actually, maybe hurting you because your marketing sucks. You're selling games for too much on your virtual console. And hey, by the way, on your new virtual console, it only has one game that wasn't featured on the Wii virtual console, and that's Earthbound. And that's the one that's, overpriced.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's overpriced, but people can make that argument or whatever.
Well, it's overpriced in comparison to the catalog, right?
Yeah.
And on the thing you're saying, another criticism that has come a lot I've seen in forums and everything else is Nintendo's getting behind the eShop, and that's great, but they're releasing these games that if you have had a computer for the last 10 or 15 years, you can do a quick download and you can have every Super Nintendo game ever made. We don't endorse emulation here because it does take money away from Nintendo. But I'm just saying that stuff has been available and is available for anyone that wants to go out and get it.
Do we really need another version of Super Mario Bros. 2? Do we really need that? No, we don't. I don't care how much you love the game. We don't need another version of it. What we do need are games that haven't been released on any virtual console. And Nintendo doesn't have a lot to work with here. That they're only going against their Wii Virtual Console here. Now, yeah, 3DS and DS, they have their own little virtual console ideas or whatever. But they're not getting a lot of those NES games. They're not getting a lot of those SNES games. They're more tailored toward, hey, this game came out on the Game Boy Color. You may have never been able to play it. Here you go. Here's those 2 Zelda games that nobody has played, but like the guys who reviewed them and like 4 other people. There you go.
Right.
That's what the DS and 3DS virtual consoles are for. But
And that's fine on the go, right?
Yeah, but the Wii U Virtual Console, it's only competing with the Wii Virtual Console, and it's kind of losing. It's losing bad right now because all it has is NES and Super Nintendo. They haven't even released anything on Genesis. They haven't done anything for TurboGrafx 16. There's just not a lot of foresight here.
Right. And when we're talking about a new console, not to interrupt you, but just to wrap that around, I mean, this is a new console. People want new games.
You've got to have something.
New stuff, right?
I mean, it took them several months just to come out with the first game that hadn't appeared on the Wii Virtual Console, and that was Earthbound.
Yeah.
And then we get right back to, oh, well, it's $10. You know, again, doesn't bother me, but people can always throw that out there. So, yeah, the price drop is what they need to do. And here's another thing, one last thing I'd like to say about this. Yeah. The Xbox One and the PS4, a lot of hype around those systems, a lot of pre-orders, and a lot of pre-orders, I think, for games, too.
Yeah.
That will be available for those systems. Yeah. But here's the thing about it. That's just pre-order hype when you get down to it. It's true. It's going to overshadow the Wii U as a system. But what it's not going to do, it's not going to overshadow the software. There's no way that stuff can make people say, oh, well, I don't care about Mario 3D World anymore. Oh, yeah, I'm not thinking about Mario Kart now. You know, especially if that price drop happens, people are going to be thinking about those games. Maybe some people will be thinking about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Maybe something. I know Tyler's preview was very positive, and people have had positive reactions to it. I personally don't care. It looks boring, but hey, if that floats your boat, some people will be thinking about that. And so the hype isn't going to overshadow that. And plus with the pre-order stuff, you know, you can only have so many pre-orders. We still have to wait and see what's going to happen after that. But that goes for any system. We really don't know what's going to happen in the end. We all thought that it was going to be impossible for the PlayStation 3 to recover and just catch up with the 360.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's overtaken it. Slightly, but it has, though, in worldwide sales. So who knows what's going to happen in the big picture, But yeah, Nintendo, it's still true. They need the price drop. It's the only positive thing they can do right now between now and the release of their, you know, big software titles.
Yeah, 2014
holiday. They're trying to get on this indie game bandwagon, and you know what? That's great. But I watched the preview that showed like all these indie games are going to be coming out on the system, and guess what?
None of them are exclusives.
Some of them you can already get on the PC.
Yeah. One
of them I think you can get on the PlayStation 3 right now.
Yeah.
You've got to get some new stuff.
Yeah.
New stuff. And a price drop. That's the key.
Exactly.
And that's the end of the argument. I have nothing else to say.
Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm Dalton Miller. You can find me at Tales of Dalton on Twitter, where I talk bullshit about video games all the time. Again, sorry for the critical nature of this episode, but that's part of our job, is to tell you the problems in the industry and our thoughts on them. And maybe you don't agree with the level up systems or whatnot, being taken out of games, especially when they're skill-based, but you know, let us know in the comments. We'd love to have that discussion with you. Talk to us about it on Twitter. I'd love to understand your perspectives as well, because you may have played more stuff or other stuff that I haven't played. And that's all from me. Stay tuned, of course, to the next episode of Vocal Co-op, coming in probably 2 weeks, God willing. And check us out on the site, fateofthegame.com. Jed, you got anything to add?
Jed Press Fate. That's who I am on Twitter. And I'm not going to apologize for the critical nature of this program. And if you really want to say something about it, hey, you've got a lot of outlets. You can leave a comment on this video. You can say something on Twitter, whatever you want to do. We're here to listen, and we do value your input. Because, you know, we're new to this, and we want to know what we're doing right in your eyes and what we're doing wrong. So
exactly.
Just, you know, we're open here, so communicate.
Exactly. Well, check us out next time. And until then, peace.